As I said, regarding life sciences, that's not my background. I've got involved with launching products, skincare, but I think some of the concept crosses over, and this is what I wanted to give you an insight onto, maybe things to think about. Also, with Lydia just presenting now and what James said earlier, you'll see certain crossovers and you'll see certain topics covered in a different way or maybe a different angle on certain things. So what I will do is just really give you an insight into what I've been previously doing. Have I looked at investment as well? I have looked at investment. I was quite fortunate to get to around where I pitched in front of Royal Sugar from The Apprentice as well, pre-COVID. So really sort of the tips and the way I think, the best way to sort of pitch or what investors are looking for. Also, it's quite informal. Ask away if you want to ask any questions as I'm going through as well. Okay, what are they looking for? I mean, what are you looking for? When you're pitching to an investor, what are you looking for? Most of the time it's money, but are you looking for advice? I think these are the things we need to consider. Is it just that pot of money? Do you need that skill set? Do you need someone who's hands-on? Are you looking for a total different industry? Do you need someone who's going to bring that contacts with them? So there's all a bigger picture. You've got to find that right investor. Obviously you have that thing, where do you want to give away? How much do you want to give away? Are you still in control of your business? You do need to consider all that. I think the other thing is, people, when you launch something, it becomes your baby. You're really passionate about it. And there's certain things that you don't want to compromise on. It could be sustainability or the way it's designed, where it's made. You need to consider, if you've got your heart and soul into this, you want to be on that journey all the way. And sometimes by having the wrong investor, the way you look at it, you feel like you're not in control. And you can, especially at an early stage, you feel like, this isn't my product no more. This isn't my service no more. And the reason you've taken that big step is to be in control. So I think it's really important you sort of keep that control. You find that right partner. As you're starting off, it is, finance is one of the biggest things, and it's one of the biggest barriers. And, it's a hard line thinking, these are my principles. Look, I've got some money. That pot, you see your bank balance go down day in, day out, and you're thinking, I'm going to have to give in. I'm going to have to get this person on board to take the business forward. But you've got to, which is really important, is keep to those principles that you've got so you're still in control. Also, I think one of the other things is, sorry, James, is conflict of interests. It's like anything else out there. There's a mixture of investors. There's some really good investors out there. And at the end of the day, most investors are there to make money. They want it to succeed. There's also people where you've got to consider, is there a conflict of interest? What is that investor's idea? Is he looking for an early exit plan? So these are just things to sort of really consider. The best thing is, can you use family and friends as well? Can you keep control? They're the biggest supporters of you. That's not a bad option as well. I'll go on to the next slide. So James really covered this, the investment, really, I think when you're presenting to investors, you've got to understand who you're presenting to. If you're presenting to accountants, the stuff they look for is going to be more different. It's going to be on the numbers. If you're looking at presenting to someone who's in that field, they're going to want more detail about what you're presenting or what your product is or service is. So it's really making sure you present to that audience. Think about the time as well. In a lot of cases, you might be going to a speed investment where you've got 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You're not going to cover everything. Use that time wisely. Keep it simple. Keep it to like 4 things. If you're standing up presenting, because people can ask questions. It's like this presentation. You can still ask questions. I can't put everything on there, but I'm just trying to give you a little snippet. The team, never forget, you guys are the experts, what you bring. So that is part of a selling tool. There's a financial monetary value to what you bring to that. You know, you could be an expert in certain things, or you've launched something before that has a value on it. So don't forget that. The technology, your idea, you know, it's important that you put that across. But if you keep it to 4 slides in most cases and just expand on that, this is the key thing about that. Understand the market, understand your competitors, you know, look at what's going on there, look at what they're doing different, because you're going to need to explain that, and we'll cover that on the next slide. So it's really the USP. You know, we all need a USP. I'm presuming everyone has sort of thought, you know, I've got this idea, what makes it different? Ask yourself that question. What does it stand for? What makes it different to what's out there? Is there a need for this particular product? And why should someone buy it? You know, that's something when I was launching products, you know, there's loads of skincare brands out there. What makes it different? Why will someone buy it? And, you know, you've got to, and I think sometimes as a small business, you've got to put more into that. You've got to, because I was presenting to retailers of supermarkets, and the hardest thing is opening doors. But once you get there, the big question is, why am I going to take something out that shelf and put your product in? And this is where you need to understand why they should take something off. Because is anyone actually, who's got a product, just out of interest?
I've written that.
Okay, who's got a product, who's got a service? Let's just, has anyone got, you product?
No, so mine's more of a service.
Okay, have we got anyone with products here? Or?
A digital product.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So, service, yeah.
So it's about a 50-50 split.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the key things, you know, if you are bringing something out, if something else disappearing, if they've got to take something out, your USP needs to be able to answer that, why that product should replace a particular product or a service.
I think it's just good to note, actually, because sometimes there is a bit of a continuum. So you might say, oh, this is a product, but actually, if you're, say, getting your water via a digital app, and it's a monthly subscription, is it a service? So sometimes there is a continuum.
Yeah, there is that sort of crossover. When you are bringing a product or service, you've become an entrepreneur. When you're bringing something new out, and you've got to wear many hats. You've got to understand that world, you know, everything. And I'm going to, like, packaging and manufacturing will be covered in more detail on the next slide. But you've got to look at every concept, how the glass is made, how the glass is going to be delivered. You've got to join that whole journey. And I think, you know, anyone that has invented something or looked at launching products, when you look at stuff, you look at it and you think about the journey it's been on, and you've got to consider what journey that product needs to go on to land on that shelf or to get into that NHS distributor. So, you know, things you need to consider, like for skincare, I never knew anything about the industry. Cosmetics was something totally new to me. But you need to understand the regulations. You know, there's things that you need to build in, like a code, a batch code, everything needs to be traceable. Where can you put that on the packaging? You need to look at the whole sort of concept. So you do need to have that understanding. But what I did do was pull in people when I needed them, consultants, because as Nydia said, you're not going to be an expert on things, but you need to get certain things right as well. Manufacturing, you know, how big is a product? Where is it made in the UK? What does that give it? You know, what kind of value is that stamp? Does it matter if it's made in China? Does it matter if it's made somewhere else? So I'll go into more sort of manufacturing on another slide. Your sales channel, you know, you've got to think about how that sales channel works. So that goes back to the retailer. If I'm looking at putting something into, let's say, for example, Tesco, I know if that's going into Tesco, if it's going into that section, the shelves are certain sizes, they're going to have to pull something out to put my product in. I need to build that story where it's going. NHS, you know, might work on different principles, but, you know, are they going to list 10 products that do the same thing? No. You've got to understand that sort of whole concept. You know, you've got to understand your numbers, the cost, price points. the margins. What margins would a retailer make or distributor if you're going down that distributor channel? If you're launching an app, for example, you've got to remember that the App Store takes X amount. So you've got to build backwards. What is that price point, and know your numbers. That's the key thing. Your plan. One of the hardest things I found when I was launching products, especially my first product, is people didn't want to really list me fill in a form just for one product. And this is sometimes a difficulty, because when you're starting something off, it's hard to launch a range of products. So sometimes you can do this by telling them a story. We plan to launch product A, B, and C after. So really, you've got to work out where you want to go. Are you a one product? Are you a one service? What are the add-ons? So you do need to understand that. Where do you want to go? Are you looking for an exit plan? Are you trying to get it to another certain level and then withdraw? So really try and understand where you want to take that business as well. Okay, packaging, and I went sort of touching on where is it to be sold. I think this goes back to this something I learnt on. I had a product that I wanted to put on in Tesco's, and I thought, keep it big, it looks really nice, looks really visible. The problem was, what I didn't think about was, by putting that particular product in, it's actually taking 3 products out because the packaging's so big. You've got to consider the commercial aspect there. So why would they, and I'm going back to this, why would they take a particular product out and put your product in? And if it's the size of 3 other products, what's the value in that? Are you taking that sort of volume? Can you do that? And especially as a smaller, newer brand, you do need to consider stuff like that. So size does matter, really. That's the bottom line. But even if you're going into a warehouse or something, how are your products going to be stocked? Is it an awkward side? Will it fit on a pallet? Are you looking at going international? The cost of shipping, if your products are not in that right size or that pack size. For example, if you were selling something into retail and you sold it in a box of 100, they're not going to get 100 in. They don't want 100 for one particular store. You've got to consider all that sort of aspect. Material sustainability, really big at the moment. People are looking at what material you use. Are you using the right product? And this is going back, are you putting a product in the glass, is it going to get damaged? There's certain places that have drop tests when you're talking to certain retailers, or damages. So you've got to consider that whole aspect. Who's going to be looking at it? The colours you use, claims as well. Are you putting the right sort of claims? Can you justify those claims? What are the selling points that can go on the package if it's retail? Or identify it. Is it in the right sort of colour on the shelf? Certain colours don't work, like yellow and white. Can you read the text? Is it visible? Is it going to get lost? We once had a product for John Lewis, and our best-selling product in this range was a black car seat at this particular time. And John Lewis told me they don't want that. And I said, why would you not want our black best-selling product? It sells 10 to 1 of any other product. They felt that the shelves became black and the consumer needed to break down that shelf, and on the internet it will get lost. So sometimes think about the way you sort of pick colours or what's right for that retail. If you're maybe looking for dresses and you just see pure black dresses, it's gonna get lost. So sometimes a bit of colour changes the way people see that on the shelves or on the internet, and the colours you use on maybe an app or something. As I said, transport, shipping, look at where, how you do this. Are you using third party? And I'm going to go into a bit of manufacturing. I think that's on the next slide, yeah. But international, can you produce a product where can it be used international? So you don't need to produce another product for a different region. Sometimes that doesn't work, sometimes that does work, So it's really thinking, can I do that in a cost-effective way where I can, if you are planning on going international, that meets all regulations? How do you plan to manufacture? For me, I couldn't manufacture myself. I didn't have that skill set. There were regulations. So, consider third party, but you've got to consider that right partner. Is there a conflict of interest? Do you need a contract in place? Do you need to do an NDA? Can you trust them? Will they pinch your idea? I've had products made, in the Far East as well. Do I feel in control? Do you need to be in control? Are they, we've got the thing with maybe, especially in Leicester, the sweatshops. Are you able to keep an eye on what's happening? Can you provide that certification that maybe your suppliers need good practices? So really consider who you use as your partner. MOQs is another thing that was quite, as I was starting off, there were certain places that I would like to manufacture, but I couldn't meet the MOQs. Is that risk worth taking? Is the risk not worth taking? You need to make those decisions and really understand that. But also, I think for me was really understanding where there's conflicts as well. Could they take your idea? Would they take your idea? And just really making sure that you have that sort of trust. In-house, if you are doing in-house license, the other thing that to consider, which was an opportunity that came across my way, was do I license it out? Especially maybe more in this industry, because you don't have that skill set. It is an option of licensing it and using that right sort of manufacturer to do that. There were stages where I licensed certain parts you don't use. You don't need to license the whole thing. You can license certain aspects of certain things because the cost of development. I guess I've sort of covered that, the price, country. So I've really covered that, conflicts. I think I've really covered that slide, really. Okay, this is the confusing one. That's the big one here. So do you need to create awareness? I mean, if you're creating a brand or service, obviously we're going to look at the 4 Ps here, but you do need to look at how you create awareness. What's going to make someone pick your product off the shelf? What makes it different? I think there's so many different ways. Do you need to get an editorial? Does that help? How you target your audience, it's really key that you understand how you do that. Where are you going? Are you selling a consumer product that's going to go through a distributor? Understand your channel, understand what makes that sort of sell. People think by having something listed with maybe a big retailer, that product's going to sell. It's not. You've still got to drive that. So you understand where you need to drive it. If you're dealing with distributors, you still need to drive that. It doesn't mean people are going to find your product. People are going to see your product. You need to work out how that is going to actually be picked up. So you need to follow the whole cycle from beginning to the end. Don't expect other people to do that for you. And I think this is self-explanatory. The 7 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, promotion, process, people, physical. I think these are the things that you need to sort of understand. Are we all familiar with the sort of 7 Ps? Do I really need to go through that? I think they've. I think they've.
They work all the 4 Ps. And
I did.
Added another one. And then
but it's really understanding, where you see your product fit in, picking that right price point. What is that step? I think the other key thing is, for me, was understanding how promotion mechanism works, especially for retail. For me, was it's understanding how much is driven on promotion. There is a massive amount when you're dealing with retail that is promotion driven. But I guess what I was looking at when I did it, I thought promotions only happen now and again. But retailers, depending on the retailer you sort of sell into, promotions are so big, and that's what's picking things up on certain products. So you've got to consider that into your margin of when you sort of launch a product. I think that's really important how you do that.
That's your Q&A now, Bobby.
Huh?
Q&A. Thank you.
Okay.
One of the take-homes that I'd take from Bobby's presentation, I know it's generalised around sort of the FMCG, and but actually a lot of the fundamentals are there and apply to the life sciences as well. Because actually, if you've got a brand like most people will be building a brand as a company or as a product or a service, that you need to think about what it is. Like actually, just I was thinking around what you were saying just there. It's like if I say Witherspoons to people, people know it's a cheap pub. But if I want to go out for a nice meal, I'm not going to go potentially to Witherspoons unless I want it cheap. But if I'm meeting a few friends at a train station, it's a good place to meet. But you know what it is. And that's what actually a lot of life sciences companies do. They build a brand up and they know what they're getting. And actually, in the pharmaceutical, so I used to work for GSK, and until I actually started working, that actually people don't, in the UK, we can't have direct to consumer marketing of prescription only medicines. We're only one of 2 or 3 markets in the world. If you ever go on holiday to the US, you'll see adverts on for, so ask for your Pfizer drug, ask for your Novartis drug. But actually, in low and middle income countries, people will say want a GSK drug or want a Novartis drug over some other drugs because they know they're getting what they're getting and it does what it does, and it's that sustainability of supply. And actually, if you look back into actually how pharmaceutical companies actually came about sort of 150 years ago, people were actually doing that because actually people could have different, well, you had compound pharmacies and everything else like that. How I'm linking it to sort of what Bobby has said, you do need to sort of think about these things because it is important, and actually it's clearly articulating what your brand can do and actually what your product service is.
Yeah, I think it is understanding that whole concept. It's a lot to take in. I'll be honest. But you've got to consider from day one of that actual idea to an actual, if it's a physical product or, every single step. It's quite difficult, and look and ask for help on these things because every part of that is an important process. From people thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to launch this product. No one considers shipping or the damages that could happen, or I've had products made in glass bottles, which a lot of that went through damages. You sell that on Amazon, it was just, it doesn't work. Where is your market? Is it going to be sold through the likes of Amazon? So that's going to be delivered by post. Have you got that right sort of, is it worth spending that extra? You've got to look at analyze the cost, where to spend money and where not to spend money. So, it can be a minefield, but you learn as well. I learned on the job what was working, what wasn't working, and I had to make changes as well.
Are there any questions for Bobby? I've got one, Bobby. Okay. So if you sort of, with your experience of like launching products, and if you could go back and sort of, because I think a few of the questions have been like quite staged, but actually you need to pivot, you need to be dynamic with the market. What would you, as a sort of thoughts to, if you could go back like 2-3 years when you first started doing a business or? Yeah.
I think one of my things was packaging. I didn't realise how important it was. I got my numbers right. I worked out the sort of cost, but these things were barriers. So when I launched certain things, they won't fit for a letterbox, and when you post something that doesn't fit for a letterbox, you're looking at using a parcel service. That'll increase costs. I looked at costs of when I was supplying the likes of Boots. I thought I'll put them in bigger boxes. But Boots, that was a barrier in certain cases, saying we can't take a box of 50 per store. We need to have them in smaller things. So it was really understanding things that I thought, people wouldn't look at, and maybe naivety or not understanding that. It was just really understanding that I probably needed to spend money in certain areas where I didn't do. But that's what happens when you're a startup. You do see the bank's balance sort of go down, and you're thinking, okay, if I can save 10 pence here or 20 pence here, but it's sometimes picking that sort of right choice, really.
Yep. I was going to say, if you were going to license a product, you have to go through all those pain points.
No, it depends what you're doing, and this is the thing. There's There's things where I was working where you had off the shelf that just needed tweaking. So it speeded up certain things because, like anything else, like tests, we had stability tests or something. It could speed up certain things, or it saved me money on developing as well. So there are ways of picking off the shelf products and tweaking them. And that's where I was looking at. And that's the way I could cut down on certain costs where I needed to, whereby I could change sort of formulations.
We've got one question that was done at the start that I think actually that will be quite pertinent to you, Bobby, and it's how to increase the response rate of a customer or through cold calling, or they said e.g. cold calling. But I think just to sort of build on that, I think it's sort of how can you get that engagement? Is it through promotion? Is it through getting your message out there?
Is that, sorry, what do you mean by that? A customer, is it?
I think somebody's put how to increase the response rate of a customer.
Is that cold?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We have lots of customers outside, and we can. I can say it's more. It is easy to find them in LinkedIn, in Google, anywhere nowadays. So and we approach them like sending email or calling them, and how to. My question is how to increase the response rate.
Okay.
Like get back to you and would like to get them set up a meeting with you.
One of the key things is, are you speaking to the right person? They call it the gatekeeper, I guess. It's getting past that gatekeeper. There's sometimes, I've done that. Well, send us an email and I'll send it to the right person. One of the key things is making sure you are speaking to the right person. LinkedIn's a really good tool out there. You know who does what in most cases. So the key thing is speaking to that right person. You've got to understand their business now. There's certain times, like I know, like retailers sort of pick products at this particular time and, autumn, winter, spring, summer. Think about the timing you're approaching them. Mondays is always the worst day to approach anyone, I think, personally, before. So think about that. But also, you've got to excite them. Like something that you buy or something, you've got to be excited by them. So use your email in the right way. Sort of tempt them, but not give too much away. Don't go into too much detail. It's like when you're pitching, keep it short, but keep it sort of sweet. Keep them guessing, but don't, try to explain to them, it would be really exciting to have that, have that enthusiasm in there, but then follow it up with a phone call. Try to get that sort of contact, because I think face-to-face people do find it hard to say no, on a call, but it is just use LinkedIn, use that right person. That's the key thing. I always find sometimes when I've approached a big organisation, if someone's moved on, it's much more easy because if you get someone new, they're really enthusiastic. Think about the timing you approach someone because they, I think that's one of the key things I've done is use LinkedIn to its advantage, work out who that key person is and try to give them a call, drop them an email, but then follow it up with a call. But don't leave it too long.
And what's your business?
Well, I am a reagent sales in the laboratories.
Okay.
I'd also say to that, it's like, how can you differentiate yourself between, say, because there's many players in that field, so but maybe giving it a more personable approach. So if people are having difficulties with their, say, assays or like PCR.
Yes, I think the due diligence is very important.
Yeah.
To understand, and we have done our work, do some homework before contact the customers.
And I think it is getting to know them on a sort of a, I don't say on a personable basis, but so that you know who you're speaking to, what their pain points are, so that you can try and address those. So it's like, I see that you're having difficulties with, and it is sort of, it's a lot of work. But if you can, and then hopefully there's a way of growing your businesses by organically, because if you're having good service from them, they may speak to their sort of partners, and they say, oh, we're having a very good service from this person. So
Yeah, and it goes back to that USP, you know, why would they swap and move over to you? You know, put yourself in their shoes, but, you know, the key thing is trying to get that face-to-face, because people, you can do so much.
Do you mind if I add
Yeah.
something to that?
Yeah, of
That's
course.
okay. One thing that I would say is if you're selling, we are coming from our own perspective. What do I want to get out of this?
Do for them.
What's in it for me? If you flip that on its head and actually come at the perspective of what value am I bringing to help you achieve what you want, you might find that they're opening up a little bit more, because telesales, in effect, it's one of the toughest ways to engage with customers. It really is. And if you're going at it very scripted and this is what I do, this is what I want, blah, 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 you're 9 times out of 10 going to be shut down and nobody will respond. Whereas if you go in slightly differently and be like, look, this is what I do, but I just want to understand a little bit more about you. What is it that you need? How can I help you? And how can I be of value to you? And then there's also key phrases that you can use, is rather than saying, is that helpful? That's a yes or no, but just say, would that be of value? And if they say yes, you've hooked them. If they say no, then it opens it up to, well, what would be of value? And rather than say to you, just say what would be of value. That then allows you to have a conversation of, well, actually, A, B, C would be better than X, Y, Z. So it's that approach is what we've normally used when we're doing any sort of remote.
Yeah, I think for me as well, it's really trying to work out the right questions and open that conversation. It is not having that yes, no. If you can engage in conversations, you know, you're making the right sort of steps.